Hi everyone, so we have Dilini Abraham here. She's a counselor and course leader for counseling programs at CTS. So welcome Dilini.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell a bit about what you're doing now in terms of your work and your ministry?
Yeah, so my primary role is at Colombo Theological Seminary, having developed counseling programs, the diploma, the masters, overseeing that.
So Dilini, so today we are here to talk about trauma.
Yeah. That's quite an important question because I think today a lot of people everything is called a trauma. Somebody stepped on my foot, my gosh, that was so traumatic. But actually, trauma is an experience of a distressing event that makes a person feel helpless, feel I can't cope with this, maybe my life is in danger, this is out of control, I can't do anything about this. So it's not the event, it can be an event or an experience, but it's the perception of the person, how they experience it is what makes it a trauma. It does, and that's the thing. I think when a person has actually gone through something that to them was a traumatic experience, because it shakes often their sense of who they are, it shakes their sense of safety. The world, safety. It's like, can I trust people? Can I trust even their sense of God? How did this happen? So it can range from things like natural disasters and accidents and tsunamis, those kinds of things. And then you have the complex trauma side of early childhood abuse. And so those things have quite a deep impact, right? Well, I think a traumatic, something that's traumatic for a person can be a one-time event. It can be an ongoing. Ultimately, depends on how the person was impacted.
So their experience of it.
Their experience of it, and I think what makes or what causes a person to feel that it's traumatic does have other factors like resilience factors, their personality, the support they have can all make a difference. So you can have 4 people in a car accident and you might have one person who for months can't get into a car, who has been impacted. For that person, it was an extremely traumatic event, while others, or 1 or 2 of them, seem to move on fairly easily. And so it's multiple factors, I think, right? Depression and anxiety are things that can be offshoots of trauma. But I think that the common things would be emotion regulation. So where a person feels like they're getting unnecessarily angry or the low side of things. There can be relational difficulties, because once, when you're affected, your sense of self is affected, all of this happens, how you relate to people is also going to get affected. And then people who have really experienced complex trauma, very often you will find that there will be intrusive symptoms. So they might have nightmares, they might have
flashbacks.
What we call flashbacks, which are, suddenly you feel like you're living this reality, but it isn't happening right now. And then obviously again, that's going to affect their capacity to work or their relationships. Those are some of the things that kind of come to mind for me at the moment. How important?
Has been
very important. I would say that to everyone. The reason being that, unlike certain kinds of mental illness, trauma has affected the brain, affected especially early childhood trauma. And I'm going to just say here, Sri Lankan, I think in our culture, early childhood trauma is prevalent, whether it is physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, not because parents don't love their children, but just because they don't know how much, how they need to, yes. And so you're having, lots of people who are affected in some way. And so your question was, how could the church...
How important it is for them
How
to
important
acknowledge.
it is for the church. I think the critical thing is to be trauma informed, to understand, so that when we see someone's behavior, you're not judging that behavior and going, oh, this person is unspiritual or they're falling into sin. First, hear somebody's story. And so if I feel like the church is the place where people should find healing, even sometimes without counseling, but in a safe, loving community where you can be heard, where your experience can be validated, rather than hurry up, pull up your socks and get on with it. So I think the church is just the organism that God has for people to be a healing place.
And I think with, up the programs at CTS, that's one of our goals, I believe, to equip people at church,
Yes.
bring in that ministry where people have the safe space to, come and speak about their trauma, and experience that space to grow,
Yes.
and to cry even,
Yes.
to break down.
And to be heard with compassion and not judgment, right? To be heard, like a person should be able to just be falling apart even, and their behaviors we may not like, but before we judge them and don't judge them, just like Jesus was, come to them, hear their stories, support them, and we give people an opportunity. And the thing is, Sindhuja, this is what I feel so strongly about trauma, right? Trauma has a huge impact on people. It has a huge impact on marriages, on, people's functioning, all of that. But it's not, it can be healed.
Yeah.
But people have to pay attention to that. It has to be found out, and people have to be helped to recognize if they have trauma in their lives or they've experienced this, and that's what's impacting them now. And then there's actually, it can be reversed.
I have this, question is that as deep as, trauma affects a person, like when you look at it from a church perspective, does it look like a lot of work to help someone with trauma? Is it a lot of work to help someone with trauma?
It might be. And I think there's levels, right? So and that's where I feel the church is really important. If you, the most basic level of help is for someone to feel like I can be who I am and talk about the struggles I'm having and be heard, and that can be validated, and that alone begins to ease some things up, right?
Yeah.
And so at that level, I think, there's a lot of help. And then you begin, people begin to realize, okay, this is a little more, this person needs, some need professional help.
Yeah.
Some need to go to a counselor, a trained counselor. Some might need psychiatric help, but not all need the psychiatric help. Or very often, when the trauma is worked through, the depression, the anxiety, all of those things that made the person seem weird, they aren't there anymore. Because their body, their brain, everything has begun to shift from finding healing. I think it's really, I would encourage people who have someone in their family who's maybe overcoming or dealing with the consequences of trauma, that they actually read up, they learn how trauma can affect someone. Don't over spiritualize, because I think that's the danger often of over spiritualizing it. So then you are not willing to sit with what the person is experiencing and let the person feel accepted, and rather actually add guilt onto the person. So I think they need to understand some of what we're talking about. How are people affected? Hear their story, give them space. And I think it's also important to say that finding healing from trauma is a different journey for each one. And for some, depending on what they experience, it can be months, it can be years. That doesn't mean the person is unspiritual. It's just that, just like we would say, you know, if I broke one bone, it heals in a few weeks. If I was in an accident and I have multiple fractures, it's going to take months to heal, months of physiotherapy. And so to be patient in the process with the person who's...
That makes the difference.
Trying to, I think what I've seen happen very often in situations of domestic violence, in situations where someone has raped, where people have even experienced childhood abuse and they come and tell their parent or whatever, and it's not validated and they are made to feel like they are to blame. This is very common in our culture. You know, what did you do to make that happen to you? You know, even if a teacher is being abusively harsh with the child and they come home and talk to you about it, sometimes the parental response is, what did you do? You must have done something. So those kinds of things, just because already what trauma is doing is that the person's sense of self has been damaged. So we are just piling on more of that, which also means that the person retreats. And we were talking about symptoms. So there's the, people can be like hyper aroused or like, you know, they're always on alert, thinking something's going to happen. But some people just shut down. And then I'm just going to go on and say this. Think about the effect of intergenerational trauma, right? So here's a woman or a man who had childhood trauma that's not healed. They get married, they have children. But because they haven't healed, not because they don't love their children, this person is shut down. They can't connect emotionally. Well, then that child now has emotional neglect. Then they suffer the consequences because they have. So I think it's just such an important area to pay attention to. And I want to add, that's one of the reasons why both in our diploma and MA program, which is not the case in many programs, we just feel like a course on counseling for trauma and abuse is a code, and we have to have everyone go through that. Because,
Interesting. I think you...
I think what it looks like is that as we are working with someone, you're helping someone to heal. You see, we are talking about the sense of self is damaged. There's guilt. There's even alienation from God, you know. And so as they first experience it from a person even, they begin to reconnect with God. They begin to see what Scripture says and take it to heart, not just kind of like, oh, I know this verse, but actually begin to grasp, I am precious to God. Whatever people have done to me doesn't change who I am. I think the truth of Scripture, I always think of the Isaiah 61, beauty for ashes, the oil of gladness for mourning, and the garment of praise for a spirit of despair. That hope is reborn in a person who felt like, this is going to be my life, you know, for the rest of my life. It isn't. And it's because God has also made us in such a way that our brains can actually heal and change. But people just need understanding and support at different levels for that to happen. So I'd say at the fundamental level, we want to develop, there's the heart kind of skill, I know they call it a skill, but actually develop compassion for people and understanding, and then learn how to communicate that. To learn to respond with empathy, to listen, and to be fully present with people. People who have being traumatized can be difficult, can need a lot of attention. But when we are fully present, it begins to heal that sense that they are alienated from the world isn't safe. So I'd say, do you have anything to add to that?
Compassion.
That's compassion.
Empathy.
Yes. But those are skills that can be learned.
Yeah.
And there are also things that our heart has to. And I want to add that sometimes the reason we can't be empathic with someone else is because we're hard on ourselves. So learning to have self-compassion, face our own kind of hurts, can actually help us then to be able to give that to somebody else. Yeah.
I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dilini, for taking us through your experience with helping people with trauma. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.